Ladies and gentlemen, Keefe D's new attorney says, our client was not involved in the murder of Tupac Shakur. I can respect that coming from an attorney. But the key is, will the jury believe that? Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like the cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. I thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe to the channel. And like I always say, if you want to be one of the first people notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and click on what appears to be that little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, Keefe D has new attorneys. They did a lengthy press conference yesterday in Las Vegas. And it was very interesting. I think these guys, they seem to be a little bit more polished, if you will, than Keefe D's former lawyer involving the murder case. Once again, it also came out that Keefe D will still be represented by Carl Arnold in the jailhouse assault case. So after they wrap up with that, I believe the sentencing date is for August 28th. And after they wrap up with that, then they'll get into, I guess, the business of the murder case. What the lawyers said was interesting because they said they plan on filing motions to basically try to suppress certain evidence, if you will. What that evidence will be, I believe they said some of the things that were found at Keefe D's house when they actually raided it. I think the shell casings and things like that. The prosecution has been pretty tight-lipped in regards to some of the things that they plan on presenting in this case, if you will. Also, in the press conference, it was interesting because they mentioned Foxy Brown's name. Like I said before, early on, Keefe D had mentioned Foxy Brown's name as being in the car with Eric Von Zip when Eric Von Zip allegedly gave Keefe D the murder weapon, if you will. And so they had mentioned Foxy Brown's name. One of the reporters said that they mentioned Foxy Brown, and then they said, will you be calling Foxy Brown? And one of the lawyers said, well, you can give her my number, and hopefully she'll contact me. And the reporter said, I don't think she wants to be heard from. And so they started laughing. This is where it gets really interesting. See, because if I guess you couldn't see Sean P. Diddy Combs' case on television, so you had to be prepared, or should I say be listening to the evidence that was presented online, if you will. Like I said, here over here on Straight Game TV, we gave the gavel to gavel coverage. More importantly, the prosecution has the burden of proof. I just want people to understand what's going on who don't really understand. So the prosecution has the burden of proof. The prosecution has a lot of damning evidence against Keefe D, ladies and gentlemen. And even though he has new attorneys who seem like they know what they're doing, one has to stick within the law, if you will, in regards to when they're presenting their case. You can't just go in the courtroom speaking willy-nilly and saying, hey, I think this should be this and I think this should be that. It has to be within the law. And so the statements that Keefe D made even on Las Vegas News 8, they basically played the snippet of Keefe D on Vlad holding up his book, basically saying, if you want to hear the truth, if you want to read the truth is in this book. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how he can overcome that, because a good prosecutor is going to run all over that statement. And once again, the presentation of the case, you can best believe that they're probably doing run-throughs on how they're going to present the case. And just the various statements that Keefe D has made in regards to standing on the corner when the ambulance went by and laughing and thinking it was funny. I think he said it was funny as a motherfucker. When they seen the ambulance with Tupac ride by in it in Las Vegas, they went back up on the strip. So many things. But the most damning thing that they're going to have to overcome, this new legal team that Keefe D has, is the fact that in 2009, Keefe D gave a hell of a statement to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, right? I believe that's one of the statements that these new attorneys are going to try to suppress, if you will. It's going to be hard. This is an uphill battle. It's not, like I said, I love the way they came out and held a press conference. Seemed like pretty confident guys. Seemed like guys who pretty much know what they're doing. What I mean by that is trial attorneys. I believe one of the guy, Mr. Boscovich, he had just had a murder case, I believe a year ago, that he tried. So like I said, he's seasoned at defending clients and things like that. I think that's going to be interesting. But what kind of argument is this is what we need to understand. What kind of argument or counter argument is the defense going to claim other than our client was not involved? After all of the statements, after the statements to the Las Vegas Police Department, after the statements to the United States Attorney, the Greg Kading statement, I don't even think they're going to use that statement. I don't even think they're going to use the Greg Kading statement because, what they're trying to argue is immunity. Once again, if there was immunity, like I said, Keefe D wouldn't be in jail. He would be free to go based on the fact that there would have been an agreement that would have been signed, and he wouldn't have been in jail. That's simply not the case. Simply not the case. And so, I don't know what argument the defense will make other than our client was not there. And so in saying that, the prosecution is going to have to prove that Keefe D was there. And who helps them do that no better or without any help, should I say, other than Keefe D? Once again, that 2009 Las Vegas Metropolitan Police report and statement that he gave them that led to the police report confession is damning. He even talked about what he did with the murder weapon. He told them everything, thinking that he had immunity at that particular time, which he didn't. And so it's going to be hella hard. If they could possibly get that statement thrown out, then I would think that the prosecution case would be a little bit weaker. But it's not going to happen because even in the beginning of the statement, they said to Keefe D, for most people who don't know, they asked him, you haven't been promised any kind of immunity or anything like that, or promised anything prior to giving this statement. They didn't say immunity, but they say you haven't been promised anything prior to giving this statement. And he said no. Right? So there you have it right there. This is a statement given to, and then what they're going to say is, hey, whether they mention the Greg Kading statement or not, say, was this the only statement that he gave, right? I'm sure he's not going to take the stand. That would be, that would be not a wise move to take the stand. But more importantly, what is going to be the counter argument? That's the thing that they have to answer in these new attorneys. And it's going to be hard. Like I said, I know they're seasoned and all of that, but this one really, I don't think can be won, but just by saying that our client was not involved. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, they have, Carl Arnold, basically, when he was their attorney, basically, the prosecution said they have receipts from the Monte Carlo hotel, right, that can prove Keefe D was in Las Vegas at the time, other than his statements. This is what the prosecution had said early on. So I really don't know. I think this is going to be, with these new attorneys on deck, this trial just got a little bit more interesting. I think Carl Arnold was in an attorney, like I said, most of the motions and things that he had filed, he had lost. And I think from that perspective, I think he probably was kind of exhausted, and he kind of knew that the statements and the alibis and the reasons that he was coming up with, they simply weren't going to work. And for whatever reason, Keefe D wanted new attorneys. They said that when they went to visit Keefe D to get him to sign the paperwork, to sign them on as his new attorneys, that Keefe D was smiling and he was happy. Another thing that they talked about was in the press conference, there was a video that I did earlier talking about R.J. Bond and some kind of documentary. Like I said, this press release mentioned their names. And when they were asked about some kind of documentary and making money off of a documentary, and they talked about the documentary prior that was talked about being made when Keefe D was trying to make bail, these two lawyers flat out denied that they knew anything about a documentary. Now, once again, I don't know if they're telling the truth. I don't know if they're lying. But when that press release was issued and put out, it sounded like they had some sound bites from these attorneys in regards to that. So, like I said, that's another issue. I don't know if they intended on it, they planned on it, but then kind of like, you know what, really don't think this is a good idea. I mean, like I said, I didn't think that was a good idea. If they were going to do a documentary, that's not a good look. I don't think if the jury found out about that and they brought that up in court, it's like doing a documentary. He's doing a documentary. Like what? But like I said, Keefe D is free to do what he wants to do. But like I said, it's not in good taste, if you will. Like I said, you fighting for your life, and you want to be taken seriously as possible. Having these new attorneys, and so like I said, the prevailing statement from Keefe D's side, the defense is our client was not involved. Now, I haven't heard them say that he wasn't in Vegas. Carl Arnold, his last attorney before these guys, was basically saying Keefe D wasn't there. But like I said, we're going to see. And also, what's going to be very important, that they said that they were looking at other alibis. Not other alibis, other suspects. They didn't really mention any names, but they said that there are other motives behind why Tupac was murdered, they feel like. Also, which really didn't mean anything to me, was they said that they were asked about Suge Knight being called. Like I said, I did a video on that already. Now, how should I say? How could I say this? Suge Knight being called. Like I said, Suge Knight is a linchpin for Keefe D. If Suge Knight chose to go to court and testify on Keefe D's behalf and said that he looked over in the car in the Cadillac and Keefe D wasn't in the car, Keefe D walks. He walks. And if he doesn't walk and he's still convicted, then it's a hell of an appeal, right? But like I said, he would walk 9 times out of 10. Do I think Suge Knight will do that? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think after the statement that Suge Knight just made in regards to Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and talking about some snitch, crooked gang members or something like that, the statement that he made, like I said, I saw that as him talking about Keefe D and him talking about Reggie Wright Jr., Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., right? And because he specifically said that part of the motive was basically because of Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. got fired. And it was retaliation for him getting fired. So that's another thing. They talked about Sean P. Diddy Combs. The prosecution, and then the reason why I say this, the prosecution has the burden of proof. So it would be like the Diddy trial, like who the prosecution would call. Now, if the prosecution case is weak, their argument is weak, Keffe D really need not put on a case, right? But if the prosecution case is strong and the presentation is stellar, then Keffe D is going to have to figure out something to do in regards to how he would want to try to counter that argument, because his lawyer is saying our client was not involved after all that's been said, after the statement that's been given to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the videos with the art of dialogue, the videos on Vlad. It's going to be very hard. And like I said, on Channel 8 in Las Vegas, they played the clip where Keefe D was actually holding the booker's hand and his hand on Vlad and basically saying, this is the truth right here, right? When he thought that he had immunity. They're going to bring that up. They're going to pound that home. And now they're saying that their client was not in Vegas, right? It's simply not enough. They're going to count. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Mr. Davis said that he was here and he did this and he did that and he did this, right? And like I said, once again, it's going to be Keefe D versus Keefe D. It's going to be his prior statements against whether he takes the stand and makes a new statement and gives a convincing enough argument in front of the jury that he was only doing it for money and fame and all of those things. Or he's going to let the prosecution just lay out their case and hope that the jury believes his attorneys that our client wasn't there. And so, like I said, the burden of proof does end up with the prosecution. And like I said, it seems like these lawyers know how to fight a case, defend their client, and we're going to see what happens. Like I said, it just got interesting. It just got turned up a little bit, if you will. So like I said, chime in and tell me what you guys think, for the people who've seen the press conference. If you haven't, check it out, and then come back over here and tell me what you think, because like I said, it's going to be very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very, very interesting. And like I said, the prosecution calling Suge Knight, subpoenaing Suge Knight, the prosecution subpoenaing Sean P. Diddy Combs. I think that would be the thing that, because like I said, the defense, I could see them subpoenaing Suge Knight if Suge wanted to testify. If Suge, and they came in there, he was like, I plead the fifth. Because I mean, if there's nothing in it for Suge, I don't think he's going to testify. Point blank, period. But I could be wrong. But the prosecution, I don't think they want to call Diddy. They already said they're not going to call Diddy. They already said they're not going to use Keefe D's statement in regards to the $1 million contract or bounty out on Tupac and Suge, the allegation made by Keefe. They're not going to use that no more. They're just going to stick with the statements, the statement with the police, the statement with Art of Dialogue, the statement with Vlad, and all of the statements and the many times that he mentioned that he was there and all of the things that he said he participated in involving the murder of Tupac Shakur. So like I said, it's going to be interesting, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be interesting. Your boy Delray, straight gang.
Life is like cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.